Marcus Hersh on the Daily Racing Form, coming to you from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, where I've been since Saturday night here to cover the Dubai World Cup and its undercard races, one of which we're going to talk about right now, the Grade 2, $2 million United Arab Emirates Derby over, what is it, 1,900 meters, about a mile and 3/16. That's two turns around the Meydan dirt track here too. Set me straight with my backwards opinions is the real expert in the group, DRF Steve Andersen, California. Steve, how you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. I'm looking forward to this. We might see a Kentucky Derby runner or two in this field, particularly if the winner will earn 100 qualifying points. So this is an important race, not only for the big prize money of $2 million on the line, but it's drawn a pretty intriguing field. And I'm anxious to see who can win this, the style in which they win it, and whether it has implications for May 5th or not.
Yeah, sure. And the second place horse gets 50 points, which since the start of the points qualifying system instituted by Churchill Downs determine the 20 runners in the field. 50 will get you in too, so theoretically could get two horses out of here. And then if you add the Japan road to the Derby and the European road to the Derby, you could have four horses, four overseas horses theoretically, one, it's roughly 1/5 of the field. Anyway, I think interestingly, I don't know how the bet is going to go pari-mutually in North America, but in talking to somebody who helps make odds at Coral, one of the English bookmakers, it's Goldtown who is a solid favorite right now over Mendelssohn in the anti-post betting. Goldtown is a locally based Godolphin gelding. He's been the best 3-year-old so far this winter in Dubai, for whatever that's worth. There aren't a ton of high-class 3-year-old dirt horses here, but he has looked fairly promising. He's got some speed. He seems to stay, and I know that the connections have Kentucky Derby aspirations were he to be able to qualify, and I think he's obviously got a legitimate shot. I would definitely not be that keen on playing him at as short a price as he is in anti-post, but I suspect he'll be longer on the tote, don't you, Steve?
Yes, I do. He's got a very front-running style, and there seems to be a few others in this field who race similar in a similar fashion, and that concerns me a little bit in Goldtown going, just a little bit less than a mile and a quarter in this race. This is really closer to the Preakness distance of a mile 3/16, and that's going to be a long way to go on the lead if he's going to pressure, and that's the one flaw I have in Goldtown is how the race may set up.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to even make the lead. I think Long Warrior may be intent on getting to the front, as he did in the prep race for this, the Albasta Kia, which Goldtown skipped. The Godolphin runners, I think they sometimes feared emptying out the tank on the Super Saturday card, and so, especially with a younger horse who'd already done some stuff over the winter, they just kept him at home and trialed him up at home to this big race rather than running the Albasta Kia, which opened the door to this newcomer Long Warrior, who, again, this was the night where it appeared to be a fairly intense bias. He went to the front and just aired. He won by almost 12 lengths. The horses behind him were not much at all, but he crushed them. To the extent that his connections paid $6,000 to make him a late nominee to the Triple Crown. I talked to his trainer Satish Seymour today, and if he wins, he's going to the Kentucky Derby. If he runs a good second, there's a good chance he would go too. He's a little posted farther outside this time. I don't know. Do you give him a chance to repeat, Steve?
No, I'm against him actually. I just look at his form and I see, granted he had a great last race prep for this, but
Yeah.
going back a little farther, he's only a maiden winner on February 3rd. His Irish form last year on turf was a little bit on the sketchy side, although he did run against a couple of nice horses in Treasuring and Seahinge. But I'm just very, very skeptical of what he can accomplish.
So yeah, Goldtown will go forward, sure, but I'm not convinced that he'll be the fastest horse in the race. I suspect Long Warrior will be sent. He made the lead from an inside draw in the Albasta Kia on that track we talked about when we were doing the World Cup preview, which seemed pretty intensely biased toward inside speed horses, and he was probably flattered to some extent by that, and also by the lack of competition, Goldtown having skipped that race. The horses that were second and third, a distant second and third, of course, are not high class animals. But I mean, he's interesting to the extent that he'd never run two turns before, and he has a pretty good pedigree. Street Cry out of Bernardini mare, it's very dirt oriented. He had campaigned in Irish turf last year. I get the sense that you may be a little skeptical that he's going to run back to his Albastakia in a tougher race on Saturday, Steve.
I am skeptical. You mentioned the class of that race. Second and third, Nordic Defense and Rua Augusta. They're not part of this field, and so they're not taking a chance in what is the richest race for the division in Dubai this year. That's discouraging. Also, Yulong Warrior, only a maiden race winner back at the 1st of February, and that's an awful big ask to be within Grade 1 company, or the highest level company at least, within 60 days against some toughies like Mendelssohn or Goldtown. So I think he's probably going to. I think he's going to have some trouble.
I will say, though, he is a late Triple Crown nominee, and the trainer, Satish Shimar, says that if he wins, he goes to the Derby. If he runs a good second, gets 50 points, he'll also probably go to the Derby. Another horse that we know has Derby designs and has gotten quite a bit of attention already is probably the most interesting horse in the race, from my opinion. That'd be Mendelssohn for trainer Aidan O'Brien. He's won the UAE Derby twice. He's also run 5 horses in the Kentucky Derby. The best finish among those was Master of Hounds, who actually ran in the UAE Derby as well, beaten a nose. The best horse Aidan O'Brien has run in the Kentucky Derby would be Johannesburg. Back in 2002, he had won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Belmont the year before. He didn't pan out as a 3-year-old at all. He finished 8th in the Derby. And in talking to Mr. O'Brien briefly, I had the privilege of doing so last week in Ireland, you get the sense that he thinks this is his best chance so far at having a real Kentucky Derby horse. He's obviously very talented. He won the Breeders' Cup Turf. He was second in a good Group 1 before coming to California. And perhaps as much as anything, he's by Scat Daddy and out of the mare that produced the Great Beholder. He has a dirt pedigree. He's a big, strong horse. He's already had 1 race this year. He's supposed to improve, and do you expect him to improve, Mr. Andersen?
I expect him to win. I think he's, his last 3 are good. Second in the Dewhurst to U.S. Navy flag. You mentioned the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, a very smart win in that race, closing from 4th in a big field. He had a trial at Dundalk on the all-weather surface there in Ireland back on March 9th. That's, that mission accomplished there. It wasn't much more than just a day out, and it worked. So in that sense, all he's checking all those boxes, and he's moving in the direction you'd expect an Aidan O'Brien runner to do. And in that regard, I think he's going to be very good. You get Ryan Moore. He's a stalking horse who could be comfortable just off the pace. I think there's going to be a pretty decent little zip along in this race to help set up a horse who could be well positioned through the first 6 furlongs. And I think that's going to turn out to be a very valuable strategy for Mendelssohn. If he loses, I'll be quite surprised.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's strong advocacy.
We've seen O'Brien do well in this race in the past.
It's his best race in Dubai, and I think he's probably the best horse in the race. Just from a personal perspective, I do hope he runs well. I hope he runs to the expectations, because it would be fascinating to see this great operation have a horse who could possibly rank as a real competitor at Churchill Downs. We already have an American horse in this race, Re-Ride for Winchell Thoroughbreds and trainer Steve Asmussen, or Asmussen. I think it's generally said Asmussen. I've pronounced it wrong my entire life. But, I don't know how much of a Kentucky Derby horse this horse is being considered by his connections even. I'm sure that they would take a spot in the race and maybe he could be competitive, but $2 million, is twice what any of the American Derby preps offer for a purse, and I think they thought he'd slot in pretty well, coming off of a win at Sunland Park over Runaway Ghost, who flattered him when he came back and won the Sunland Derby last weekend, and also the Delta Downs win. Delta, Sunland, Meydan, it's a road no horse in the history of horses has ever traversed before. But going back to last year, Steve, he ran in the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. He had kind of a between trip. He didn't run great. He was competitive to about the 5/16 pole, and then he kind of sucked back out of there. Didn't fall out the back door, but that race has been just so remarkably productive already this year. Just a hugely key race. And this is a horse that might have a decent chance on Saturday.
I think he can easily finish second. If I'm so confident about Mendelssohn, I have to also equally respect Re-Ride and think that he can also be in the first 3, because I wouldn't think Asmussen would take a horse who's not anything less than 100% ready all the way around the world when there are so many USA races to pick from last week, next week, and 2 weeks from now. So there's just a lot of reasons to think that there's something behind the scenes in a positive way that suggests that Reride is one to beat. By the way, I might add that I too have also been to Delta, Sunland, and Meydan in my travels, so I know those roads
consecutively.
No, unfortunately not.
That is an accomplishment, though. Congratulations. I do. Reride had he worked on Monday, and I know Scott Blasi, who's been here a couple times at least, if not three. I think three. He's been pleased with. He said the horse traveled really well. Was happy with the work. He had a couple walk days. He'll go back to the track tomorrow. Tomorrow being Thursday, and yeah, he's got a shout. One other horse probably we should mention, Raya, the filly. She won the UAE Oaks. I don't necessarily think she's going to have a great chance to get in the top three in this much tougher field, but she is earmarked for or marked for a trip to the States. She's going to be transferred to trainer Bob Baffert, and if she runs representatively on Saturday, she will be pointed to the Kentucky Oaks, for which she qualified, getting 50 points in the UAE Oaks, which is part of the Road to the Kentucky Oaks. Do you think Raya can do better than third or fourth, Steve?
Not necessarily. Not in this field with Mendelssohn, Reride, and a few of the others that have run well locally. I mean, it wouldn't be a complete shock, but I think more realistically, just give her a good outing, get her more conditioning, and look towards May 4th with the Kentucky Oaks, if at all.
Yeah, worth mentioning, I should note that she is currently trained by Doug Watson, the leading trainer in Dubai. Once again this year, it's become a perennial thing with him. He runs a great operation, a fine man as well. But yeah, I think we both landed on Mendelssohn to win the UAE Derby and take Louisville by storm on May 5th. Probably the best UAE Derby top to bottom, or at least the most interesting I can remember seeing in my time covering these races, and well worth digging into, and I think that you should do so.